Nice to meet you, Javier. First time in half in person.
You are welcome.
Well, I mean, I'd like to first introduce, Javier to people here that may not know him. He has recently, as of 10 years ago, assumed the maintenance of one of the most basic and most famous packages of LaTeX, which is Babel. And someone also deeply interested in issues of production and use of tech in production rooms and so forth. Welcome to TUG 2020. Let me see if I can start shooting you some questions. First thing I'd like to hear is your background. How did you grow up and how did you get here? Can you tell us a little bit about your background independent of tech?
Well, I was born in the Canary Islands, although I spent most of my life in Madrid. I think there is nothing special to tell, or it doesn't seem to me. My liking for language issues and the world of books go back to my high school days. Because I was one of the founders of its paper, the school paper, and I was passionate about having a pretty look with all the letters in their places. It was the era of the typewriter, By then, my parents asked me if I liked a spectrum, and this changed my life in many ways. Because I discovered something for what I had natural intuition. I wasn't interested in games. They quickly bought me and I began to program. I programmed a little word processor and even I started writing assembly language. When I remember now how my parents spent in Spectrum books, difficult to find, very expensive. I'm very grateful to them for supporting me in almost anything when I wanted to dedicate myself to something. When I had to decide what to study, the first thing I thought was physics, physical science. But I suddenly changed my mind and finally, although it seems a bit strange, I decided to study radio, and that is what I did for 7 years in a classical music radio station. But even then, I didn't stop my tech jobs and other subjects, and actually right now my main activity is as a linguistic advisor, which has little to do with radio. But I am a person with very broad tastes.
Can you tell us how did you meet tech for the first time and how that pushed?
Thanks to my wife, thesis, wife now. She was my girlfriend then. Before, I already worked with Ventura, an incredible program, and I must confess that at first LaTeX seemed incomprehensible to me and convoluted. I got the notebook and it looked to me like a mess, and to be honest, it still seems like it. But I could cope with the book by Kopka and Daly, and there I began to understand what it's all about, and so on, step by step, I was getting more and more. Well, in Spain, there was no tech group, so I signed up for Dante. And so, in addition to learning more about tech, I practiced a little German. Well, I already said I like programming, so I started writing small macros, then not so small macros, and finally packages. I usually say that there are those who solve Sudoku to entertain themselves, and I program, especially, but not exclusively, TUG.
Interesting. What changes have you seen in the document production world and in the tech world during your career since this time that you met Ventura all the way to now?
Well, the love for a well-made book at all levels doesn't seem as popular as it was years ago. The phrase "go forth now and create masterpieces of digital typography" doesn't make a big impression today. I also notice there is a lot of tendency to believe that the typographic skills are above all the handling of a program, when that's just the starting point. Another point is font design is regarded more in the creative aspect than in the practical one, in the needs of actual documents. But let's be fair. We can say the love for a well-made book was formerly universal.
So I had an interesting discussion with Boris yesterday, and it seems that tech, with the size of the usage base of tech is one of the world's oldest subsystems.
Mm-hmm.
There are, some COBOL programs here and there and so forth, but they don't have the usage base that tech has. And that is 1977 to now, quite a few years. Do you think that it will continue forever? Some sort of
evolution of a revolution. I think now there may be a little revolution going on with the arrival of LaTeX. It has its loose ends, indeed, but it's an important advance, and its possibilities remain to be seen. In fact, I'm using a lot LaTeX in Babel because it has allowed me to introduce function for non-standard hyphenation or for transliteration, by not to mention BD writing and line breaking, where we can have an almost absolute control.
So you see LaTeX as a definite change in the tech world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What packages, what kind of tools do you find essential to your work right now as a document author and as well as a producer? What do you use on a daily basis? What kind of packages, kind of tools do you use on a daily basis?
Sorry, I don't follow.
So what kind of packages, what kind of tools do you use on a daily basis as an author and as a producer? Because also a producer.
Well, I don't think there is a simple answer for this. But obviously between the essential package and mine. No, seriously, when I start reading LaTeX package manuals to see what they are all about, I'm still amazed at what they can do. Sometimes I wonder how I've been able to live without a certain package. The package I use the most are the standard ones: Hyperref, graphics, my own packages, and also a package by Zdeněk Wagner for the page layout.
And when you're producing a book, do you use exactly the same thing as an author, as being an author?
No, depends on the project.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And do you use mostly a LaTeX flow to produce your own work? Do you
Sorry.
use LaTeX mostly for producing your own work?
I usually write my own macros. So I like to reinvent the wheel.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you are a guy that knows a lot about other issues, especially things like typography and orthotypography. Do you think it's worth spending a lot of time on certain issues in typography, even though very few people notice?
Sure, and they notice it, although without realizing it. A good-looking book invites reading. The problem is there are publishers we believe the opposite, and not only in the field of typesetting, but also, for example, in copy editing. I don't know how the situation is in other countries, but at least in Spain, many media have dispensed with copy editing.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So the production is substandards as we evolve into the 21st century, you think?
Yeah.
Do you use other tools besides tech in your work?
No.
No.
Technically, no. Technically, no. As I am linguistic advisor mainly, I use it for complementary tasks. Well, I work at a foundation called Fundeu, directly linked to the FN News Agency and partly to the Spanish Royal Academy, whose function is to help the media in the use of Spanish with neologisms and all that. But there can be a connection because writing and pronunciation of names from other languages is another of the tasks of the foundation. And I'm something like the specialist in romanizations. So as I can see, there is a connection, even if it's more between my daily work and what I'm doing in Babel.
You do a lot of work on a certain area with not very many people understand exactly what it is, which is orthotypography. How that came about to you? How did you become interested in such specific area of typography? Could you explain to us what orthotypography is?
Yes. Well, this is a concept used mainly by French typographers and has been imported to Spain. Basically, it's not very different from a combination from orthography style and typography. I'm not sure not even me, I'm not sure exactly what orthotypography is, but well, in Spain it's a concept used very often, and if I'm right, in French too.
All right. On this camp of orthotypography, I wanna bring an issue which is very dear to mathematicians. There are two camps in mathematics in terms of punctuation in formulas which are central to a page. There's the people that believe that it should be punctuated, and there's the people that believe it should not. That punctuation is to introduce a pause, and that if you have a formula which is centered on the page, that pause already exists. What is your idea on that, and where do you draw it?
If you put it when the formula is in line at the end of a sentence, why should we put when displayed? Anyway, in typography, what matters is to have good taste and good eye. Then we can have many rules of style, but if they don't work for us in a certain context, you shouldn't hesitate to think of other possibilities. After all, it's still an art. To paint, to compose music, we follow many rules when we are learning, but the masterworks has been created by breaking the rules.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's talk about Babel a little bit. I mean, about 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years, I think, you took over as the main lead maintainer of one of the most used packages in LaTeX. How has it been? Tell us.
Well, my interest in the localization issues come from much early. Already in 1997, I was considering creating an alternative to Babel, which I called Polyglot. But it wasn't long before I realized it was a futile effort, because Babel, after all, did mostly its job, and it was the standard. Then came another opportunity, which was Omega, by Janis Haralambous and John Place, and I started working on it. This time, the package was named MEM, an Hebrew letter, but we already know Omega sadly didn't develop its full potential, so MEM also fell. Then Frank Mittelbach proposed to me to join the LaTeX team. I think that was impressed, which I gladly accepted, because that way I could help in this area, possibly others, and I still continue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you do your work on Babel? How do you connect to authors, languages, and the production of the LDF files? Could you tell us a little bit more about that workflow? How do you find the people to help out with the languages and so forth?
Well, in many cases, I generally don't like interfering with the work of those who develop national styles, some of which are also supported by the respective user groups. But I'm always willing to help and collaborate. Also, if I discover there is someone interested in supporting some language, I contact him, and as I did, for example, with the group for the Kurdish. On the other hand, I like to investigate by myself. I'm self-taught by nature, and I like to learn things by myself. I think I'm good at it, and I really enjoy doing it. Sometimes that means you end up reinventing the wheel. Sometimes that wheel is worse than the others, but other times it turns out to be better. Of course, that doesn't mean I don't like suggestions, helps, or whatever. Quite the opposite. I like them.
I was doing some research, about a few weeks ago on Babel and a few other things that you have written in order to understand your work a little bit more, and I came across with a package that you maintain for the language Guarani. This is my mother's tongue. Literally, my mother is my mother was a speaker of Guarani,
Uh-huh.
and I was extremely surprised to see this. This is a very, I mean, for people which are out there, this is a very, it's a language spoken by a lot of people, but
Hmm.
without very formal production of books. The language spoken in entire South America, from the north of the Amazon all the way to the south, and by the indigenous people of South
Hmm.
America. And how do you connect it to people that help you out with Guarani?
So many years ago, I really don't remember why I did it. It's true that for a time I was interested in the languages of the Spanish-speaking countries, but I don't remember more details, to be honest.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I guess one question that a lot of people are interested is how Harfbus and how Lua Harfbus is changing and may change Babel.
Very little with relation to the original LaTeX, which I've already have working for some years. Um, mm, Mainly because Harfbus is about font, not about languages. Sure, you must the fonts contain the information about how to render many scripts, but I think Harfbus is not exactly part of Babel, and more of the latest kernel from the spec. Mm, there is the possibility to make Harfbus like as the default shaper, but as Marcela explained, I don't think it's not a good idea, because there is a problem in how Harfbus deals with hyphenation points in the Latin, Cyrillic, and Greek scripts, because many hyphenation points are lost. It depends on the font, but in those scripts, and in most cases, the best option is to stick to the default renderer.
Where do you see the future of Babel?
As a framework to localize and internationalize documents at several levels. Until now, Babel has followed a model which I call vertical, based on language styles, which are basically self-contained black boxes. Uh, that's fine in monolingual documents, and in fact is and will continue being the recommended method in these cases. But when we need to combine several languages, we can have serious interoperability problems. So I'm working in a new model, which I call horizontal, where languages can be defined in a descriptive way with the help of INI files based on key-value pairs. That even allows us to reuse a solution from one script in another one without too much hassle. For example, traditional line breaking of the Amharic Ethiopic turned out to be almost identical to that of the Southeast Asian script. So it was enough to adjust the case to get the right results.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, I have when I started on this project, I asked for I help a lot of people, in order to get some guidance, and Arthur, for example, has been a contributor and so forth, and I had a specific question that comes from the mathematicians camp, which I'm in close touch with, which is, would there be a day in which we will be able to choose mathematical functions based on their own languages?
It's something has been requested sometimes, but on other hand, it's a controversial issue. Should they really be translated? And after all, it can be solved easily with a renew command.
Yes.
So I wonder if it's something necessary in Babel. Well, I think it should not be ruled out on beforehand, but because what I just explained, it's not one of my priorities.
Yeah, well, the biggest complaint I hear, Javier, is that well, if you have a big shoe, your foot grows, you know, and then you start seeing books in Portuguese with signing instead of sino, and so forth.
The same in Spain. The same in Spanish. Yeah.
Yes.
And in Spain, there is also limit in Spanish is with an acute accent. So so traditionally it has been written with it.
So let me ask you about some modern questions. One of them is about polyglossia. I mean, polyglossia was sort of started right around the time that you became a development leader on Babel, and polyglossia got started as a replacement for Babel for ZTAC and LaTeX. Do you see, and then the development of Babel picked up back again with your work, and do you see some synergy happening between the two packages?
Well, actual polyglossia is, actual polyglossia is older, about 5 years, I think. And on the exact list, some people even suggested I take charge of it. I didn't do it for several reasons. One of them was my personal situation at that moment, but another was my experience with a polyglot. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, if you wonder if these names are related, the answer is yes, they are. When there was a discussion about a multilingual package for ZTAC, I proposed reuse this name because I wasn't going to use it anymore. And that name, but in Greek instead of English state. I don't remember who proposed the translated name, but I think it was a good idea. As to the cruise feed, actually, when I created all the INI files, I did thinking it could be useful for both Babel and polyglossia as a shared resource, not only for them, but also for other packages. Well, the work was done, and now we need to feed it, which is something I'm doing gradually. There are already about 200 more or less complete languages or easily completable, and there are also templates for about 500 languages, and they can be a starting point. If you don't mind, I like to show some examples of this method, but I must to share the screen. Okay. Share. You can see it? Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, okay. For example, Japanese. As you can see, it's based on in key value but I think a better option is GitHub. Yeah. Here let's for example German here. So we have many files, tiny files for many dialects. For example, German, one of the German. And then here templates. Well, so you can, let's choose. So you can see the keys without the values, but you at least you can start a key. You can.
Right.
So
I can see
several sections for counters, for example. You define them, and then Babel makes internally the macro. Well, stop sharing.
So I see that you seem to be fully BCP 47 compliant on at least on the naming of the files and so forth. It seems that you are fully BCP 47 compliant, that you have implemented the standard names of the languages according to
see, yeah, sure. You can already deal with BCP 47. What's more, you don't even need to declare it in the preamble, because Babel can load the locals on the fly with some limitation, but it can. Thinking in use case, I realize there are texts generated externally, and the main document may not have the slightest clue of the languages needed. An example may be a bibliography with many names and titles from a multitude of languages. Again, let me show it. I share them. Share. I think you can see the text document.
Yes.
You can see the use package loads only Danish. But if you write select language with a BCP code for Austrian German, it well.
No, I see the.
For example, with German gas, the month will change.
Yes.
The month will change.
Yes. Very neat. Very neat.
The same using the language name. If you load German, it will on the fly load the German with some limitation, as I say, mainly for short text, a few words can be useful in those use case like externally generated documents.
Nice. Let me ask you a question now about pre-production and production using PDF. I mean, the open source community tools seem to be completely unprepared to dealing with prepress. We don't have ways to check PDFs. We have problems with resolution, color space, flattening transparency, overprinting. And I see that you're starting doing some embryonic work on the package color space. Can you tell us where you're going? And
well, it's a problem indeed, but I'm sure the work in progress will bear fruit. For example, Joseph Wright and Rory Fisher are working on improving the color support in LaTeX, so that color space will be better done, and avoiding the conflicts between different packages, trying to generate PDF code directly. Anyway, on the other hand, we should never think a document created with, say, InDesign is automatically ready for printing. I myself have suffered poorly treated or poorly created documents by designers who think it's all about creating frames and things like that, and they may not even know how to correctly import a PDF image. And I think LaTeX could be of great help. For example, sorry.
So do you want to share something with me?
No. On the contrary. Here again, I think LaTeX could be of great help. For example, I think there shouldn't be impossible to write an utility to convert calibrated color space. I'm not sure, but I think context can do it.
Oh, that's great news. You know, LaTeX being used for pre-production. That's great news. So do you want to, are you going to fully take color space into sort of a color production package for PDF?
For the moment, my color space is stopped. If there's so there is no point in continuing with it if there will be support directly in the LaTeX kernel. So for the moment, I stopped working on it.
Well, I mean, unless other people from the net has any questions for you, let me see if I can see any questions coming from the net. And
so
that's it. Would like to thank you very, very much. I appreciate your work tremendously, and looking forward, you know, all the updates to Babel and even to color space, which is a little bit dormant.
Thanks. No questions. The chat.
I don't see it. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see the outlet. Let me see the outlet.
I think the last chat.
Yeah, from Michael Top.
Yes. What compilation do you generally use? I use LaTeX since many years ago. This is the first question. What compilation engine do you generally use or recommend? And are there any extra preliminary such command line. I don't understand. If you want to create an extra preliminary such a command line of terms. I don't understand the second question.
Well, I mean, it is.
Aren't you sure
hard.
they are old ones?
Huh?
Aren't you sure that those are old ones?
No,
Old
no, not sure.
too.
No. This is about Malayalam. Yeah, at register.
Yeah.
No, this is not for me. You're right, Frank.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
old stuff.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Javier, and I really appreciate you standing up and coming up for this interview with us.
Thank you,
Good
to
luck.
you. Yeah.